Welcome to the Video Jungle Podcast. I'm Artie Gold. This is Justin Andrews.
It's me.
And today, Justin, we're going to talk about something that we kind of knew was important, but kind of fell into this, which is finding the right character to profile in a documentary. And I'll even take it one step further. Like, even if you're doing any work, like, you got to find the right story, find the right character. And we went through this experience with one of our short films, and it was an interesting experience for me because you kind of always knew that you want to find the right story. Finding the right character, what we went through, this is going to be a really good lesson.
Right. Unless you're making a film where you can find the actors and you have the story, then the character is really important because Roy from our team has had this great story brewing in his head since he was a wee lad. And then he grew up and decided to make a little docu short about the subject of video stores. And the subject is really cool. It's something that resonates, but without the right character, the story really would fall flat.
It's the Video Jungle Podcast. Find your fascinating.
If we shot at a different store, did it the same way stylistically, told pretty much the same story, kept it the same length, it would not be at Hot Dogs, it would not be any of these festivals. I mean, it really is finding Miguel that makes this work.
Roy Power is our lead editor, and he is, I love using the word with him, but he's a cinephile. He loves movies. Like, he probably is as educated in, and I wouldn't always agree with some of his choices, but he is educated in his movie files as far as directors and the movie lingo. And Roy, it's great to have you on our podcast.
It's great to be on. I'm excited to talk about the process of memory video.
And I don't know, you're the one that let him out of his edit cage?
No,
I didn't let him out.
He let himself out.
Oh.
That's the thing about Roy.
I unchained myself
He
and
does
escaped
what
the
he
edit
wants.
cage.
So just to let the audience know a little bit, the Video Jungle Podcast is powered by Animus Studios. Animus Studios, obviously, we do excellent work, award-winning work on the corporate side, but we also believe in the passion side. So we started what we call the ASK Club, which is the Animus Studios Super Short Club. And Roy has really taken the handle on that and kind of driven our passion projects forward. And he came to us one day on one of our pitch meetings and said, I have this idea. And he pitched the idea. And the idea was to kind of profile, what video store rentals, the blockbuster worlds, the Hollywood video worlds used to be like. And to be honest with you, Roy, when you pitched it, I didn't understand the concept you were going for. And I think
Nor do we ever.
But if you can explain a little bit about, what that concept was when you pitched it and what you were really going for.
Right. So I'd been reading a lot recently about video stores and the whole experience of going to the stores and kind of the nostalgic factor of all that. But I was kind of less interested in the history of Blockbuster and video rental and more about the experience of going, just being a little kid wandering the aisles for what felt like hours looking for movies. And I thought that, if I wanted to tell this story, no better option to be someone that would still run a video store, someone who's even more passionate about that than I am. So I really wanted to do like a character-driven short piece about the video store experience as it used to be and what it's becoming.
So take us back to that little boy Roy. What was
Little
it about
boy
the
Roy.
What was it about the video store that appealed to you that even now, like, you think back and have those memories that, again, like you said, they felt like hours, they weren't, but just like something that you really can't experience today because it's too easy to pick up a remote and just like find a movie. What was it about the video store and that experience that has stayed with you?
Well, I mean, thinking back with any of our memories, I feel like we always, as humans, just kind of over-exaggerate our memories or kind of distort them or think differently than what they really were. But for me, when I think back to going to the video store, it wasn't about the movies I was renting, but it was more about going with my friends or my mom or after work or after school and just looking for that right movie, trying to figure out the way I would spend that Friday night, and then maybe getting pizza on the way home and the whole experience surrounding the actual movie, which I think is actually a quote from the documentary that's kind of stuck with me for years. So, I mean, with memory video, for example, maybe from the very beginning, it wasn't really so much about this has to be a video store movie, but more about a movie about memories and childhood.
Yeah, it was interesting. As the old man at the table, my mind just got flooded. I used to, my family owned a video store. I worked in it. My friends owned a video store. I worked at that one. We rented movies all the time. And that memory just, everybody has a personal experience with that period of their life. What was interesting to me was I personally went directly to the history of it. And I was like, oh, we need to do this, this, and this. And I know you had kind of fought back a little bit. Like, it's not what I'm trying to do. And I couldn't visualize what you were trying to do. Talk to me about the first step that when you were researching like the character or the place or the trying to find, because you started this project and I think there was only like 3 blockbusters in the world left, right? And you were trying to find the right character or location or person still running this place.
Right. So I basically did memory video backwards. I feel like most people find a subject by chance, find a person by chance for these profile pieces, and they focus on that person. But for me, it was finding the idea first, trying to get that idea of nostalgia and childhood and the video rental experience out there. So for me, it was finding a character to kind of tell my story for me in their own way, of course. So I started to kind of research people that still own video stores, mainly on the East Coast because it's just easier to contact and easier to film that way. But I'd visited like several stores. There's one in Boston. There's one in Maine that we filmed at. There's one at Connecticut that we filmed a lot at. There's a few in Brooklyn and New York. And it was just kind of a long process of like kind of interviewing these people and talking to these people to see who would best fit my idea, basically.
And when you first brought it up, like everyone on our team was just like, yes, that is an idea that makes a lot of sense. And it was timely. At the same time, I think the last VCR made was ever manufactured. So they stopped making VCRs. You did pick a timely thing that just tied into
Emotion.
all these things happening. And Netflix is like probably going to win a significant Oscar this year. So the world is changing rapidly, and the timing of the subject made a lot of sense. But I think what was really interesting was finding this character is very hard because you have a limited set of options of video stores, and you kind of became a curse to some degree.
I mean, I think the thing with that is just knowing very much what you want and just being able to step back from all the hard work you put in and realizing it's just not working. So we shot pretty much a whole documentary in Connecticut, and it was at this store with all very nice people, very nice owners. It's a great community, but it really didn't reflect that experience and that childhood nostalgia of going to the video store on a Friday night like I was going for. And from the start, I really wanted Murphy, the editor of this, to take it and do what she thinks is best for it, and kind of take my voice away from it just so it's not all me. So she edited it for a while, and she showed me a 20-minute pad, and I was watching it, and not to her fault, but it just wasn't really working for me. Like, it felt very dry. It didn't really feel like it made much sense. So we showed that to everyone around the office, and I think we all kind of had that same opinion. But regardless, Murph kept editing a little bit longer, cut it down more, started editing in B-roll, and it just still wasn't working. So I think at that point I said, like, all right, let's just put this on hold for a bit and let me find a new person. And let me see if that works better for, I think, what I'm going for and what would connect with people better.
I do kind of think that like some of these short docs I watch or even documentaries, they start off in a certain path, and if it's not the right story, they just try to smush it in, right? They like, not exactly, but I'll just try to make it happen. Or the other path was, I think I told you, just keep looking for the right one. I remember being on the road. We have a lot of road trips when we go into our corporate mode, and I'm sending you like, every time I saw something that looked like a video store, active video store, or even like a video game store, I'd take a picture and say, what about this one? Just because I believed in that story as well. So turning the page now, talk to me about how you found the right character and what that emotion felt like when you knew that it was the right character.
Basically, I just went back to Google like I did the first time looking for video stores.
Classic Google search.
Google, gotta love Google. And then, the first time I was looking around Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, some places closer to Rhode Island. And then I figured, well, if I want to get this done, let's try maybe New York or Philadelphia.
Spread those wings, Roy.
That's right. Not too far, a 6-hour drive rather than a 3-hour drive. So I found this store, Viva Video, in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. It's a little bit outside of Philadelphia. And they had opened a few years ago, and there turned out to be a ton of interviews with the owner of the store, Miguel. After finding him on Google, basically, and reading all of his interviews and basically stalking him for a while, I just gave him a call, and I said, hey, Miguel, I'm Roy. I work at a video production studio in Rhode Island, and I'd like to make a documentary about the experience of going to the video store. And as soon as he started to talk, I was just on board with this guy. I mean, he was so much more lively and personable than anyone else I'd talked to. And it took about 5 to 10 minutes of a phone call before we started to roll through it and get it done.
Now the story, I think, is clicking in your mind, right? Now you're like, okay, I got this. Like, what is that emotion like?
I mean, it was just awesome finding him because for all the others, I felt like, all right, well, I found something to tell the story. But finding Miguel really just reinvigorated how excited I was to do this. and maybe take a step back and really think about, well, how can I stylize this a little bit more interestingly? Like, how can I plan to go and shoot and make this stand out a little more than what we had shot before? So just finding Miguel, reading those interviews, and kind of understanding his own personality sparked new creativity in me, and how this could be done.
Describe Miguel and just like describe him as a person, what he does for work, describe his family, describe him when you went down and talked to him.
Well, I say this a lot when people ask me at like film festivals and such, but Miguel really is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, he is just always on, just happy, friendly, will talk to anyone about anything. He has a family, a wife and 2 kids, Percy, Ash, and Zoe. And, everyone seems to love the guy, and he really is kind of the face of this documentary. Like, literally, he's the only one that speaks in it. But although he owns Viva Video, it is not his full-time job. He works as an RN pretty much full-time and basically works at Viva Video and keeps it alive just because he wants a video store to go to. So in the documentary, he talks about how he doesn't take any profits from Viva. He just keeps the store running and pays the employees, but really just wants a location to hang out at and look for movies and borrow movies from, be able to talk to people about it. So, I mean, that's a pretty genuine thing to do where, you're working so hard basically as a volunteer to keep this experience going.
Hey, have you heard of the internet?
I have heard of the internet, yes.
Well, maybe you haven't used it yet, but it's a thing where there's a browser and you type in stuff. And if you type findyourfascinating.com, that's the first step to learning about our process for helping businesses uncover their fascinating, brainstorm new ideas, and make some stuff happen, right?
That's the first step I would take. It's actually what I do even in our meetings.
Hey, have you heard of Netflix?
I have.
It's a website that helps you find movies and curate things that watch interesting stuff that you might like.
That's kind of what findyourfascinating.com is going to do too.
Nothing like that.
It's not even apples to apples.
No. Those are just 2 things that are cool.
That's nice.
People that are coming into a video store now are coming because they love coming in, because they want to come in. I feel like there's very few people that you talk to that don't have a fond memory of going to the video store. I find it hard to remember the specifics of the movie itself, and what I remember are like the emotions and feelings that I had for it, and that's more how I remember what I think about a movie. I think a lot of that is lost.
So speaking of characters, we've got one on the phone with us right now. It is Miguel Gomez, owner of Viva Video in Pennsylvania. And we're going to talk to you, Miguel, about your experience as, it says you're the subject of Roy's documentary short Memory Video, but I kind of feel like you've taken Roy under your wing and become a superstar in the world of video rentals. So welcome to the Video Jungle podcast.
Well, hooray. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited, thrilled about it.
So the first thing I would like
I've
to...
never been on a podcast before.
Oh,
by the way, so
fantastic.
I hope I don't mess it up.
Well, we did have to wait 15 minutes for you to get your tea. That was cool.
That's true. That's true.
But
it'll be worth it.
So the first thing I was going to ask you was, what was it like when you got the call or email from Roy about potentially doing a story about this subject, but essentially about you?
I mean, I guess I'd gotten approached by like a variety of people, mostly for like articles and stuff. This was the first time when somebody wanted to do a documentary. And this was also the oddest one for it being, like we're nowhere near each other, Roy had never been into the shop or anything. And so it was, I had not really realized that I was, an internet person that could be, found and somebody might take interest in. So that was a very surreal aspect to all of it. But I don't know. I love video stores. I'm always excited to get the word out. So I was mostly just excited, like, oh, well, I'm more than happy to do this.
And what about video stores? I mean, you're trying to keep the culture of this alive. Mm-hmm. What was the spark? I mean, people can watch Memory Video to get a little bit more of this, but just what is it about this whole thing that you have so much passion for?
Sure. Well, for me, like, it's just like my personal history with movies is like revolves around the video store. That's what access has been and meant for me for most of my life. I mean, it started with like cable, and then once I was, a young adult person or a teenager, I started going to video stores pretty religiously and watching everything I could there. So like for me, definitely film education is incredibly tied to that sort of space. And so I'm, just trying to carry on that tradition. Like the start, like in Memory Video, I talk about like Nightmare on Elm Street being like my into the power of movies, just watching that way too young. But what like kept me hooked with movies was, like back when I was growing up in Virginia, I mean, I there was like either 4 or 5 video stores that I would, frequent regularly, usually more than one on one day, to be able to amass everything I wanted on any particular, viewing occasion. And so like, I mean, I guess it's just that, like, I like people being able to have access to movies. And I mean, and I like pushing my taste on other people too. That's certainly a big part of it. But I mean, I certainly carry all sorts of things that I don't care for, so that people can watch it. And that's I think for me the importance of the video store in a lot of ways. I guess, some of it anyways. There's more,
but don't you enjoy the experience of viewing a good movie on your phone? There's
or your watch. How about your iWatch?
I don't think I've ever actually watched a movie on my phone.
If they had a VCR player that could connect to a phone for viewing, now that would be a real fun time. Like you could put your VHS into the VCR, connect it to your phone.
Right.
Oh man.
Well, I mean,
VHS is having a little bit of a comeback. I mean, as Roy knows from getting in touch with talking with Lunchmeat, who made the limited run VHS of Memory Video. I mean, it's nothing, not to the scale of vinyl or whatever, but you will find like an article here, an article there about like the sort of the niche success of certain like VHS releases.
Sure.
It got started with like House of the Devil being released on tape.
right.
Miguel, could you just talk to what is the experience that you want to create for people when they walk into Memory Video?
Viva.
Viva Video. Jeez.
We're renaming the store
It's
a dang
that's
movie.
now a VR special.
What is the experience that you want to create when people walk into Viva Video, especially all your newest fans from all across the country that are going to be traveling there, right?
I mean, I guess like what do I want them to? I want them to come in, and I want them to have some sense of awe at how many cool movies there are that they've not quite realized if they've not been in a while. Like definitely, like I feel like when people come in for the first time and sort of see like the racks and racks of stuff, like it's something like, whoa, this is amazing. Like especially like if they're like a classic film fan, I don't know, seeing like the early Scorsese shorts or something that aren't on DVD even like on our shelves, or like if they're like a cult film fan, like seeing like, I don't know, like The Face with Two Left Feet, this like Travolta exploitation movie it's amazing, like weird sex time. It's like sort of seeing this stuff and being excited that all this stuff is available to them. And then aside from that, I mean, I want them to. I love somebody that I can chat with about whatever movies they be in. It does not need to be what I like. I just enjoy people that want to talk about movies coming in, and that they come in and they have a nice time talking about movies, and hopefully they rent some stuff too, of course. But yeah.
So let me ask you this: if you could describe, because when we talk about in the pitch that we do to people about, we found this guy running a video store, and I think the idea is like, we know you're not doing VHSs, you're doing DVDs, but what kind of people come to your store consistently, and the crowd that comes to your store, and why are they coming to your store? Because like you said, most people are probably Netflixing it or Huluing it or Disney Plus now, and I think a lot of times when I pitch that, people thought it was like, oh, that's really cool, but then the next question is like, but who's still renting? Like who is in there?
Sure. So I mean, we've got like a few different sorts of folks. We definitely have like the families that come in as their like Friday night ritual, with the kids to like pick this thing. They still enjoy that as the method in which they get their movies, And I love seeing that just because it's so much like my experience, and like what you were talking about, your experience in video stores. Like I don't know, I think that's it's nice to see in an age when everybody grabs their own tablet and watches a different thing, on the couch next to each other or something, to still see that shared experience of choosing something. But we definitely so there's those folks. There's folks that, like I mentioned before, folks that are into film history or what's usually like considered important film, something that might be like, released by Criterion or something, We have the folks that are digging through all that sort of thing. that will go through like all our Altman films or all our Bergman films or something like that. And then we've got definitely like a large swath of people that are into like the like 70s and 80s horror and exploitation. Probably, I mean, in large part, well, A, because those are awesome, and B, because, you know, I particularly like those genres, so we're especially well stocked on that. And I think that's the sort of thing that you're less likely to run across somewhere else. So it's maybe more the sort of thing that you're going to find at our store and not really run into. Like there's a movie that I really love. Probably my favorite thing that I watched this year, this movie it's got like 17 different titles. I think 3615, Code Père Noël, Dial Code Santa, Game Over, and Deadly Games are the titles for it that I can remember. It's a French movie that came out the year before, Home Alone, about this kid who's home alone and then gets this homicidal Santa comes to his house and is trying to murder him. What's up?
That was playing at a theater in Providence last night. Dial Code Santa. I'd never heard of it. I missed it. Yeah, I was busy.
Oh, it's so good. It is crazy good. It's unbelievably good.
Yeah, I watched the trailer. It looks awesome. I might watch it tonight.
You should absolutely watch it.
So
100%. It's so good.
So what's interesting here, Roy, if you can give me your thoughts about this as well. My initial thought when you pitched this was we were going to talk about the history of like the video rentals and Blockbuster's closing and how sad that is, and a whole generation is gone. As I hear Miguel speak about his store and like why he wants to keep it alive and the people that rent from it, I think it's closer to what I think you were kind of talking about. It was about the communication of that culture, right?
Right. So,
which is why it worked, by the way.
Right. And that is pretty much what we wanted to go to. But I'll be honest, I mean, one of the things I'm more embarrassed about this process before we actually went to Miguel's store was this idea of like storyboarding, you know, shooting Miguel in, you know, shots of isolation, or, you know, there's only one of him walking under the bridge, like eating alone at a diner and all this crap. Like, it's like, you know, like it's him against the world, you know, and not only is that kind of heavy.
It is me against the world.
Right. Not only is that kind of heavy handed and like a little over dramatic, but as soon as we went there, it's like, this guy isn't lonely at all. He's surrounded by everyone. He's not the stereotype of what you'd think a video store owner would be like. And that's how it should be. So we quickly pivoted and filmed him with customers and friends and the family inside.
On the flip side, Miguel, did you find Roy to be kind of lonely and alone?
Yeah, clearly.
I am definitely more alone.
Beer is what it came down to.
Oh, that's great.
No, but I think it was a good decision because there's been actually two really good documentaries about like VHS specifically that kind of cover most of the video store history aspects that were like feature-length ones. Adjust Your Tracking was one. I can't remember the name of the other one. They were both really great. But rewind this.
Yeah, I talked to Josh Johnson, the director, and his wife Dor, and they're nice. They helped me out with the Kickstarter for this a lot and gave me some good advice. Okay. So they're in the special thanks actually.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, so like basically they'd covered that ground already, and I think in a way that would be really hard to do again, especially in a short like film. So yeah, and so I mean, and then the one thing, it was definitely like Roy had me. One thing that it doesn't make me crazy, but it does make me cringe a little bit in it. Is like the main still of me from the movie is one where I'm not smiling because Roy told me I couldn't smile, and it's like, you know, I feel like that's the folks listening to this cannot see this, but you guys can probably attest to the fact that I'm pretty smiley most of the time.
Smiley Miguel.
So it was, you know, it seems unnatural, but
right.
But yeah, but I think that I was glad that the movie did not portray this like image of like wholly an image of loneliness. There's definitely like the shots of me not smiling, the shots of me like
under the bridge,
kind of sullenly through the town or something.
I like those shots only because I think I didn't look at it as loneliness as much as what you just said was like me against the world. Like you are doing something that doesn't make any sense, Miguel, right? It's not a good business decision in a genre that may be closing against streaming video. So it's like it is you against the world. It's like I'm going to walk the walk and I'm going to do my thing, which I applaud.
On that idea of the right character, what did it feel like to be able to call Miguel and say, hey, this got into a very significant film festival. We're going to premiere here, and have him join you? Tell me about like what festival it got into, what that meant to you personally, what it meant to bring Miguel up there.
Right. So we applied to several different festivals, not a huge amount, but festivals that I was interested in going to or different locations I'd like to go to. And the very first one we got into was Hot Docs, which was amazing. I mean, that's one of the best festivals you can possibly get into in the world for documentary specifically. So I was pumped.
So it's not dating doctors, Justin. There's not just a bunch of hot docs
Yeah,
around,
that's
right?
Hot docs. So yeah, I called Miguel about that, or I emailed him, just all capital letters. We got into hot docs. He was pumped. And for him, it was even further to go to Canada, but he booked his hotels and he got his rental car and he was ready to go. And from then on, I mean, hot docs was a huge deal, and we've gotten a lot of attention specifically for that festival. But we also got into more great festivals after that, between Montclair and Nantucket and New Hampshire, which were all pretty mid to top tier festivals. So,
Well, let me ask you this, Miguel, because this episode is about finding the right character
Sure.
and driving a story. Obviously, you were the right character for the story. What was your experience at these film festivals with Roy? Being that you were the main character, did you expect the feedback that you got from? Yeah, there's Roy. Did you expect the feedback you were getting and the response you got from the crowds and potentially like the after effect? You know, I don't know who else got in contact with you, emails, or did you see business go up? What was your like expectation and what was that experience like?
I don't know I feel like I didn't really have much context for it. So I don't know that I had real expectations. I was mostly just kind of like, thrilled to be a part of it and like very excited. Like, so I love horror movies first, probably like coming of age movies second, and then like quirky documentaries third. And just sort of like break that line for myself from being someone who enjoys quirky characters in oddball documentaries to being, I guess, the quirky character in an oddball documentary was definitely like an odd moment. But and so I think there was a lot of that I enjoyed. And the other part that was a little bit weird about it. So like the movie is very much like about this nostalgia for a bygone time, but like my experience of it isn't yet quite bygone, since my store is still around and I'm still there, multiple times a week. So like, for me, I'm certainly nostalgic for the days when video stores would have like a line out the door if there was a snowstorm coming or something like that. But it's not the same as what I think most people experience when they watch the documentary, which is like, by and large, folks that no longer have a video store and haven't been going to a video store for a few years. And so I guess like for me, I felt a little bit of like an odd disconnect in that sort. Like I wasn't quite expecting like, oh yeah, like I feel like I know in my mind that the video store is over in most parts of the US, but I guess I'm usually interacting with people that come to my video store, so it's not quite over. Like so if that makes sense. So like it's sort of like a different flair than I was.
I think that's what makes you the perfect character for this, because you're in the moment. You're not looking at it through the outside lens. You're living it. So it's not. It's present time for you. It's not nostalgia. You're living it every day, right? And it just seemed like it was the right story for these festivals. It seemed to be the right. It just seemed to have the right moment that fit into some other docs that they're trying to, with the film festivals, they're trying to like maybe even do themes, or maybe there's a bigger documentary that fits the time period, the 80s or the 90s and stuff. Did you feel that when you went to these places, and did you just feel like at some point when you found the right character, everything just started to fall into place?
Yeah, I think if you talk to some of the great directors of even fiction movies, Paul Thomas Anderson, Tarantino, Scorsese, they'll say their job is done once they're done casting. And I know it's different for a documentary to an extent, but not really, because as soon as I found Miguel, it wasn't about stylizing everything and kind of putting our own voice into it. It was really just about best portraying his voice in the form of a documentary. And I think that's pretty clear with the screenings, the ones Miguel would go to. People aren't talking to me, and I'm happy about that, because they're talking to Miguel, and that means we did a good job representing his story. Everyone's pumped to see him. They want to talk to him and buy him drinks and talk about their stories as a kid going to video stores. And I think that's a pretty special thing for a documentary from what I've witnessed at these festivals.
So if you're listening and you're being asked to be in a documentary, that means that one day you could go to a film festival. People could want to buy you drinks. You could sign a couple autographs.
Hang out with Roy.
Consider it.
Roy's going to be big time.
So this is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes, because Miguel is super handsome and cool. But I think when we look at Memory Video, it's very personal to us as a company. And it's tough to like remove our knowledge of everything that happened. For people listening, like what makes the lessons learned from memory video important for people listening, and what are some of like the key lessons in your mind from seeing it from our perspective?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is we talk a little bit about this in our Art of the Interview podcast, but one of the things we talk about is when you're doing an interview or trying to find a story in the corporate world, you're kind of locked into using everything that you film because that's what the nature of the beast is. What happened with memory video, which is really intriguing, is we tried our best to go out there and find the right person, the right topic, the right company to fill the story that we were trying to tell. And I think internally, we all kind of like realized like it wasn't the right fit. And your internal clock is, well, we'll just make it work. But what happened was watching Roy go through the process of finding the right person to be the right subject and the right voice for his message. That was really inspiring to me because once he did that, everything just started to flow. And that flow of just everything working was just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely really interesting to see this difference between the first attempt at the character and then Miguel, who we just heard, somebody that is very likable, but not in like an artificial feeling way. And I think Roy's conversation about, you know, the people at the festival that attended the screenings wanted to talk to Miguel, not Roy.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And that's just sort of proof of finding the right character, someone then that can really carry the weight and isn't an actor.
It also plays into the fact that whether it was planned or not, and I think it was just a little bit of both, to tell you the truth, because it was a story that was in Roy's mind. And I went to a couple of the festivals, so I saw this happen. It didn't really matter, to tell you the truth. Like internally, we debated a lot about what could be better with the documentary. What could we improve on it? What should we have done here? Could we have done that? But at the end of the day, what I realized watching this live, when I watched it in a couple of these film festivals, people just wanted to talk about the subject. And I think that is a powerful thing, that you were able to put your finger on something that really people wanted to talk about. I've been to many film festivals where you watch them and go, that was good. That was a good movie. I had never really been to one where, especially one that we've produced a film that people were just like, they wanted to talk. They'd come up to us or Miguel and they would just say like, I had a video store I went to 20 years ago and I missed that store. Like it was a very polarizing /
Roy nailed the topic.
Yeah, he just nailed the
topic, and it could have fallen flat without the right person. So the biggest thing is like not being afraid to say no to the wrong people, knowing when you've got the right person. And then I think the one thing that would have helped this is even exploring it even more. Like I think if we had the budget, filming more with Miguel, filming
Correct.
more of his story probably would have made this an even stronger piece.
I think the other thing that's really hard to do with these types of projects, and I applaud Roy for doing this because I have trouble doing it, is when do you stop editing? When do you put it into the film fest? When do you have to cut it off? And I think that's a very hard thing to do with somebody like Miguel, who's, he's still alive, Justin. He's still living his life. So you could continue that story. We could watch him like The Truman Show.
We could film him just, talking about movies. But
Yes.
I think by now, hopefully you've already sort of started like Googling around, trying to find memory video. Hopefully you've got it queued up on your next to watch. You can go to memoryvideo.film or just search for memory video on Vimeo, and you'll see this shot of Miguel, who's got long flowing hair. That's where we're going to want to go to watch this stuff.
As I like to say, the more handsome Fabio.
You could probably also go to thevideojungle.com, and we'll probably post it there too.
This has been the Video Jungle Podcast. Find your fascinating, a product of Animus Studios